Hello and welcome to another Alexander Technique Made Easy interview, this time again with Judith Kleinman. Now, why would we be interviewing Judith again? It could be because she has created an amazing book, which is called Finding Quiet Strength. And we're here to celebrate the launch of that book. And let me tell you, it is a lovely book. Now, of course, what Judith and I have in common is we're both quite creative. But the thing about this is that during lockdown, Judith and myself started some new projects. My project was the YouTube channel and some other social media stuff that I've been doing ever since. But Judith started to draw. She started to draw, and this is what we were talking about in the last interview, wasn't it? How amazing to start drawing the ideas that through our shared work, we, obviously like to find new ways of telling people about those ideas. Now, so Judith, that was what happened, right? We have that in common, that we bet lockdown didn't stop us at all.
No, that's so true. Thank you so much for this interview, Nick. It's really lovely to see you and very nice to talk about the projects that we both do together.
Yeah.
And I must say your creativity is so awesome, because we were just saying before we started recording that you have such a sort of technological skill with images and putting words together so beautifully. But I'm sort of still at the primitive cave drawing stage.
That was one of my questions. I mean, I know that you sort of tried to make this book a bit of a collaboration, but of course the book did come out of these wonderful drawings, which of course we can show one here and you'll be showing some more later. I mean, that is just so nice.
Thanks.
Simple drawing, but it just says it all, really, doesn't it? About what we do.
Yeah.
Basically, which is we try to encourage the world to chill out a bit.
Yes. Nice way of putting it. I think the drawings also, in a way, the complexity of words gets a bit sort of theoretical and sort of heavy, and sometimes just going into that kind of visual, almost emotional connection to ourselves, where we just release into something bigger than thinking type of intelligence, which is a very important aspect of our intelligence. But of course, intelligence includes, how we see, how we breathe, and all. What we really love, you and I, is how we move. That movement is part of it, and somehow, that's what. It's quite difficult actually to convey in a drawing, but
you seem to have managed to do it very well. But I mean, you have literally done absolutely hundreds of these now, haven't you? I mean, you've put a lot of time in.
Well, I'd love to say I put a lot of time in. I because I'm like all of us, got lots of projects going on, so it's sort of where I go for sort of a bit like a quiet time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Me, really.
We need that.
And I think it's very important for us to walk the walk of the work and actually take time for ourselves and recharge the batteries in different ways. There's so many ways we can do that, and one of them is through creativity, as we know, and inhibition with all sorts of its many aspects of resting, but also noticing that we need to change the energy. So drawing really helped with that for me, and as you say, sort of expressing the different aspects of the work.
But I think for lots of teachers that's quite difficult, particularly perhaps new teachers coming through. And I don't suppose you thought, as I have thought looking through your book, that it would actually be quite a useful teaching aid.
Oh, that's kind of...
Yeah, because effectively, I think some of us, the words flow and we can have, lots of different creative ideas. But actually, the truth is, when I really think about it, a lot of people don't. And they may be brilliant teachers in terms of their hands-on work and their love of the work and so on like that. But it's actually quite difficult to come up with lots of different unique ideas. Now, You're not drawing solely on the Alexander technique either, are you? You've got yoga in there, you've got Tai Chi, and you've also collaborated with a lot of people. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things about all our lives is
Mm.
we draw on different disciplines. Of
Yes.
course, we do for different skills.
We can't help it.
We can't help it. And yet, somehow, right in the center, the sort of still point of the turning life,
Yeah.
is, um, is our work,
Yeah.
this quiet stillness. And it underpins the choices we make in how we go about everything that we do, I like to think.
Oh
And
God, yeah, yeah.
so we can apply it to, I think it's important to have a movement practice, to have a practice of walking in nature. I love to think that that's something that we've
Yeah.
all discovered over lockdown.
Yeah.
And I think the disciplines of looking towards the world of mental health, which you and I have spoken about before, sort of noticing that Alexander isn't solely a physical practice, but it's very much a mental, emotional practice, and that those things are very integrated. And how to convey that is quite a thing. So I wanted to draw on sort of saying, oh look, you know, there's we've all got a different jigsaw puzzle of the way we go about our lives and call on different strengths, but you know, right in the middle of all of that is this quiet connection. That is, it's not only is it a flexible strength, but it's an actual resilience in ourselves, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, of course, you've got the title there, Finding Quiet Strength, and that's the title of the book. But it seems to me, sort of looking at the book and having obviously spoken to you before, and obviously knowing very well your Instagram page, which is sort of full of these illustrations, which isn't very nice, that Finding Quiet Strength isn't necessarily this book. It's more of a movement that you seem to have created. Tell me a bit about that, how you found that title and what that actually does mean. And will mean to obviously the people that buy the book.
Yeah, well, in a way, you know, it sounds so cliched, doesn't it? But it's a journey, isn't it? Life, it isn't a destination, hopefully. And the journey of it, with all its ups and downs, all our lives have grief and worries and work, rest and play. And you know, we all need life skills, I think. And so I found that phrase, that particular phrase, just really helpful. Sort of
very
noticing,
powerful.
Yeah, noticing.
But it is your phrase. It doesn't come from sort of Confucius or something like this. I mean, where did it actually come from? It is such a powerful phrase. It's a lovely phrase.
Oh, thank you. Well, it might come from Confucius, and I don't know where it came from. It sort of just appeared.
It probably doesn't, by the way, because I'm really into Confucius and I've never.
But I think it's sometimes thought of as sort of as a spiritual work as well. I like that. I like that thought that we're finding that. But I think all of us feel so concerned for the world at the moment as well, not just for ourselves, but you know, and how to activate our inner agency to look after ourselves, but also look after the world, feel we're doing our bit. I think that was just being overwhelmed by, you know, lockdowns and, you know, wars and all the terrible things that go on, that, you know, keeping this sort of inner smile and optimism and hope going is quite a thing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's always this very great emphasis on the material. You know, we've got to pay the mortgage. We've got to go to work. We've got to put in 16-hour days. We've got to beat our children up because they've got to be prepared to do it too.
Yeah.
And of course, people like you and I don't believe that. We're very much more about, no, actually, you know what? Live on less and get into something more spiritual. And I think this book, you know, really represents that very well, because you can say, okay, I could go out and work like a pig, but actually it's killing me. maybe I'll take some advice from this book and really start to sort of practice yoga, practice Alexander technique, practice embodiment. And I do really personally think there is a real need for many more people to come on board with not, maybe fighting the environmental problems, but actually human problems of saying, look, we can change the way we live.
Yeah.
We can have a much smaller carbon footprint simply because all we're trying to do is grow as people. That is what is really important, I think, and really underlooked. Nobody talks about this. It is a complete, way of life that has to change. It's Liz Truss recently famously has said growth, 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 and other people are coming along and they're saying no, health, health, health.
Yeah.
And that is this work that we're doing here, is trying to get people to understand something more about that. Now, you talk, and this is to do very much, of course, with emotional intelligence, which you've got on the front cover of the book. Can you tell me what you have been exploring in terms of emotional intelligence and how that is a part of it?
Well, very, very lovely to hear what you say there, because I so agree with you. It's sort of like, instead of thinking of having more, I think the idea of deepening our skills to come back to a calm state of mind when possible. And I think one of the things that is very important to say is we're not sort of suppressing grief or anxiety or stress. We're not sort of, being too Mary Poppins about everything. But I'd like to think of it as we're actually befriending our habits and understanding them, so that this amazing idea of Alexander, this coming to quiet, allows us to befriend our habits. It's like the bridge between recognizing our habit and making our choices.
Yeah,
that's how I see it. That we need that sort of quiet moment to make a choice, and our work is predicated on conscious choice. And sometimes we can't, and then it's time to, bung yourself on the sofa and watch Strictly Come Dancing or whatever it is that's going to change your mood. But for most of us, as we deepen this practice of quiet and connection, and as you know, I am very interested, like you, in sort of looking at other disciplines, and what I think both of us find is that so often other disciplines are kind of explaining the Alexander technique again, just in a different frame. So some of them, like the polyvagal theory, for example, or the work of trauma release that's going on, fantastic, beautiful work, Peter Levine and all these wonderful, marvelous people who are saying exactly what Alexander work is saying, is let's not let fear, anger, and anxiety rule the day. Let's make choices to come intelligently, to reorganize ourselves to our responses rather than our startled reactions.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I think what we're noticing more and more is not just a sort of dialed up anxiety in everyone, but also this tremendous collapse of energy, people just really being very overwhelmed. And I think that's why having a sort of active practice as well as finding quiet is really great. The work really bringing us into daily activity that's got a little energy around it, right?
I mean, I think there's a definite need for a kind of work-life balance, isn't there? And people are killing themselves to get the work done, to pay their mortgages, to be promoted, whatever it is, really putting in the hours, and then they are just collapsing on the sofa and then going to bed and then waking up and doing it all again the next day. And I think what this book offers and what we're trying to offer is to say, well, no, you don't actually have to do that. What you can actually do is have something in the background that's constant, that constantly reminds you of who you are, why you're doing what it is you're doing, and that you don't have to kill yourself to do it. But I see so many people doing it, but not happy to sit and breathe, not having discovered the benefits of that. one of the things that I thought was interesting about this book was I just sort of thought, well, imagine you've been in hospital for, say, more than a week,
Mm.
and you're a bit depressed because your work's been interfered by this. You're ill and you're going home, and there's going to be a recovery period. If you've got this book, that's
Oh,
going to get you off on a nice track.
thank you, Nick. That's so good of you. I hope so, and I hope
That's the
it'll
sort of thing, I think. Yeah.
have its journey. I mean, it was just such an interesting. I'd sort of like to say this to everyone because I didn't really plan to write a book. It sort of
No.
came about by hap chance, as they
Well, I
say. And
remember I remember asking you if there was going to be a book, and you said,
yeah,
"Well, I don't know."
I don't-
Which is why it's so funny to be talking to you about the book today.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
so good of you, and I think your encouragement really supported me actually to do. Or maybe it
Well,
is okay to do this project because
yeah.
um, this wonderful friend who she just runs this incredible press,
Mm,
this new
mm.
press she's brought out, Quickthorn. And the
Oh,
beautiful
right.
thing was that
Mm,
she could help, just by being a press that they
mm,
work in Britain and everything's printed in Britain. It's
mm,
all on
mm.
recycled paper, and
Well,
all of that kind of, that was so nice that
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
there for me
Mm,
to
mm.
have that connection with the
Well,
actual
that's
publishing of the book, and it's
yeah,
such a big collaboration. I might just show you if that's all right. Just share
yeah,
screen
yeah.
here.
Please do. Yeah,
Um, the the sort of
yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it?
helping with layout and
Yeah.
um and this
Yes.
this
Right.
sort of
Yeah. Now
help.
that picture is one of my favourites. Let go.
Oh,
That
yeah, letting
is
go.
such a great picture, isn't it?
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah,
Letting go. It's something that we all find so difficult.
yeah. Anyway, you sort of get the idea, and I
Yeah.
wanted to
Mm.
keep the images as important as the text so
Yes.
that it wasn't overwhelming, and sort of the feeling of spaciousness
Mm.
and understandable. And as you
Yeah.
know, our work just, yeah, this sort of I wanted to just show this one because
Mm.
our work has quite a lot of um, language connected to it that
Sure.
can
Yeah.
sometimes be a little bit technical, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to let it be approachable. So
Mm.
we have this idea in our work, don't we, of end gaining, for
Yes.
example,
Yeah.
and means whereby is this,
Mm,
and
mm,
just to
mm.
sort of simplify some of those concepts.
Yeah.
Anyway, you get the idea of.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, that's one of the things about the book is that when it came, you sort of get this book and you go, oh, great, it's arrived, and you're sort of opening the package, and it comes out and, it's quite a sort of big book, but it's
It's
not
quite
huge. It's not huge. So you've got this thing that you feel is like, that was worth buying, because you've got something. It's a real something. And then it's just very tactile, isn't it? It has a nice tactility, and then of course that what do they call it? The leaf cover. The sort of first this picture here. I mean, that
Yeah.
is such a lovely piece of
Oh,
design, isn't it? Very
yeah.
nice.
Yeah. They
And so
really
then, as you
are
go
good
through,
at
you
that.
realise what you're getting into, which is just it's so accessible. I think is the word.
Oh, thank you.
So
Yeah,
so
that's a
that
lovely thing to say.
this is a
And
good
I,
this is a good picture here. Look, can that be seen?
yeah,
I mean,
that's
the pictures are great, aren't they? I mean, it's so much fun, isn't it, to have
a,
pictures like that?
well, that's important, isn't it? I mean, I think we know in our world that we have this terrific unconscious bias towards anxiety, and that's why I sort of wanted to pull my dog into it a little bit. There are quite a
Yeah.
few pictures of her because animals really are good at letting go of anxiety pretty quickly, and
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes we just default to that,
Mm,
carrying that state on around,
mm,
and
mm,
that
mm,
sort
mm.
of thinking that well-being work always has to be quite serious, or like classical music has
Yeah.
to be serious.
Yeah.
Actually
Exactly.
quite a lot of it's It's humorous.
People are trying to be perfect in their everyday work, and they bring that to the work that we do.
Yeah.
Trying
And
to be perfect. It's something that I've done another YouTube video about, that whole business of we shouldn't be perfect. We don't have to be perfect. In fact, we have to not be perfect.
we have to not be perfect. And sometimes we're sort of, there's this idea in our work, isn't there, of the inner smile, and sometimes we've all got this inner frown. and
Yeah.
I think that sort of, you know,
It's
when
true.
we can sort of
Mm.
connect to the good and the joy, it's
Yeah.
important to remember to really absorb that, because we get
Yeah.
so sort of habitually
Mm.
pulled towards this bias in nature
Yeah.
to be pulled towards anxiety, I think. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I wanted you to talk about some of the different influences. Now, of course, because of course you have trained as a yoga teacher, haven't you?
Yeah, I did quite a long time ago,
But did
actually.
you? But what sort of yoga did you do, and who did you train with? And was that
I,
the Wheel of Yoga, or?
yeah, I trained in London with a very lovely
Mm.
Irish woman, and
Mm.
it's based on Hatha yoga and Iyengar, and the Tai Chi that I practice is based on Chapman Kleinman's
Wow.
work. And I think they're both, actually, both Iyengar and Chapman are rather like Alexander in
Yeah.
some ways. You know, they sort of hold a methodology that
Mm.
sort of is
Mm.
very accessible
Mm.
and very rounded,
Mm.
and they
Mm.
see it
Mm.
in the big picture. And I think in many ways, our Alexander technique, beautiful work, is a martial art. It
Yeah.
is a sort of
I always
way
think that. Yeah. Mm. 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 Mm.
of of looking after ourselves under threat, whether
Yes.
it's threat
Yeah.
from another person or sometimes it's threat from ourselves. We can
Mm.
be
Mm.
self-destructive. So
Yeah, it's kind of how to use yourself best in a given situation, isn't it? And that's
yeah,
often where we go wrong. We don't quite know how we should use ourselves in that way. And of course, Iyengar yoga is famous for, working out exactly how a posture should be done, rather
mm,
than just going for it. Which, of
yeah,
course, is what causes the problems in life, and of course causes the problems even with existing students when they suddenly decide to lift a plant pot and pull their back, and you say to them, "Were you practicing the Alexander technique at the time?" Oh no, I wasn't. And that is the problem, isn't it? That people are jumping very quickly into doing things, and what these particular disciplines are trying to teach is how it could be done better.
yes, exactly. And I think that the how of it then becomes a sort of, I like to think of it not just as a martial art, but a sort of practical philosophy that
Yeah.
you're
Mm.
sort of present, you're engaged in the idea of living your life, being present and aware and making your choices generally when
Yeah.
you can. And I think when
Yes.
you can't, it's time to know, you know what, I've dialed, my energy's dialed up, or I've collapsed, I
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
to
Mm,
rest
mm,
now.
mm, mm.
Mm.
So, just got that. Yes. Well, now one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, obviously, when you're going to write a book, it's quite an undertaking. Now, of
Mm.
course, you'd already generated quite a lot of the material, but I mean, how did you set about actually compiling this book? 'Cause, I mean, was it really hard work, or I mean, because
Well,
one imagines it is.
well, I'm so fortunate that I've got a very supportive family, and
Yeah.
they very helpful. And I wrote it
Mm.
not this summer, but the summer before, over the summer holiday. And
Right.
I just sat down and I thought, the most important thing
Mm.
here is to have a structure.
Right.
And so I
Yeah.
came up
Mm.
with this calm, confident, coordinated, just
Mm.
sort of thinking of themes for each section, and
Yeah.
that kind of just created a structure. And once you've got a
Mm.
structure, and you're wanting to convey, of course, our beautiful principles of the Alexander technique,
Yeah.
and then I guess kept finding how much they chime in, as we've
Mm,
said,
mm, mm,
with
mm,
these
mm.
other disciplines. How incredible it is that we're all
Yeah.
very much talking about similar skillful
Mm, mm,
thinking
mm, mm.
and observing. So it sort of wrote itself in that way.
Yeah.
I can't
Right.
pretend that I'm great at grammar and spelling, so I had quite a lot of help with that from the computer and
Oh
and
yes,
my
yes.
my
But
dear
you obviously have
husband.
somebody proofreading it and all the rest of it as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. All that. I
exactly.
mean, all
And
that side's really by the by, isn't it? Because what we know and the stories we know, we can tell them, and grammar can come later, isn't it? I don't think we don't live in a world where everybody's too uptight about grammar. Of course, we know we have the grammar police. But they are the ones that should be coming and having Alexander lessons and learning to observe all that.
Yeah, but it's very nice, isn't it, to feel that you're that you're in a team with these things. I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
I feel that one of the things our work
Mm.
does is help us not just self-regulate but co-regulate and ask for help
Yeah.
when you need it, and
Yes.
let other people's choices, like
Mm, mm.
about things like layout, and not
Yeah.
to sort of go into total control freak nutcase.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying before, it is a very, as a creation, the design aspect of it is
Mm.
very nice. I mean, how did you come up with that design? Was that in collaboration, or
That was very much
because
in
that
collaboration.
really, because actually to get that kind of, it's quite complicated, isn't it? And and there's quite a high sort of production values in that sense that it
Mm.
really is a sort of very nice book to leaf through and to you
Thank
know
you.
how
Yeah,
it's graphically designed very well.
thank
Did
you.
you have someone who was graphically designing with you?
Yeah, I mean, they
Yeah.
were just the most fantastic
Mm.
team, and I think one of the things my publisher, Katie Bevan, who's
Yeah.
an absolute wizard, um, said, the most important thing is to let each person do their job. Trust each person
Yeah. Right.
in the
Mm,
process, and
mm,
and
mm,
that was
mm,
really helpful, actually, because you know
mm,
you
mm.
can you can find that in life. A lot of our anxieties are sort of over controlling things, I think, and this
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to
Mm,
collaborate and be easy with each other and
mm,
share
mm,
ideas is just really helpful. I think our
mm.
Alexander world sometimes needs to remember that collaboration,
Yes,
other
exactly.
modalities, is not a
Supporting each other.
weakness.
Yes,
It's
exactly. Yeah.
actually a strength. It's a
Yeah, yeah,
strength.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a communal effort. Like,
Life, for sure.
that's great. Well, look, Judith, it's fantastic talking to you. We've only got a few minutes left on the clock here now, but now the book is obviously available. Where is the best place to buy the book?
Oh, thank you, Nick, for thinking that to mention that's a good thing. Through Quickthorn Books,
So that
or
is quickthorn.com, is it?
yeah, quickthornbooks.com. And,
Quickthornbooks.com. I mean, we'll put it
and
up.
thank you. And then also it's actually on Amazon.
Right.
And I think if you go to your local bookshop, my local bookshop very kindly in Highbury, Inc. 84, where we had our launch,
Oh,
um,
yes.
they very sweetly, and several bookshops are having it as part of their collection, so that's very nice.
Oh, great. Oh, well,
But
there
I
we are.
think
So it's
you can,
widely available.
yeah,
It's
I
widely
think you can
available.
go in and
Yeah.
ask people.
And I mean, I'll put in the description below, I'll put in a link to quickthornbooks.com so people just click on it and buy it. And I do obviously strongly recommend all the Alexander teachers to buy it. So, because it's got full of content that you can use and lots of lovely ideas. And of course, obviously, a lot of the people that are practicing Alexander technique that will be watching this, obviously, you can buy it as well. And you'll learn very quickly all the stuff. And it is a lovely book to have. I mean, it's just what it's. I mean, we obviously, as Alexander people, have lots of different books about all these subjects, but some of them stand out, and this is definitely, I think, a standout book. So,
Thank you so much, Nick. And I would likewise recommend everyone to follow your work, which is Totally inspirational. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Judith. Well,
Great.
we shall leave it there, and
Thank you.
thank you so much, and goodbye.